It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to another episode right across the weekend of the Real Estate Breakfast as we talk property news 7 days a week, as heard on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon. Yes, the weekend is continuing. I hope it's a good one at your place. A little bit of downtime, perhaps from all that property chasing across the weekend. If you're going to any auction today, good luck with that. May Lady Luck be on your shoulders, as they say. And it is Sunday, June the 16th. Good morning to Samuel and Dana in Sydney. Regular listeners of the podcast, you tell me that you have just bought a 2-bedroom townhouse in Parramatta, and you say that it took 4 years of saving. So well done, because, 4 years isn't too bad given how many years some people do end up saving. You might be in your 4th year saying, I wish we were getting out of our saving and into our house, but you might have another couple of years to save. So if that is you, join in on the conversation by emailing us any question or suggestion, or in the case of Samuel and Dana, just tell us about what's happening in terms of your property. Our email address is myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. Well, another very, very busy week here, and it started off on Monday. We spoke to Mario Sanfrancesco about why the Canberra market is so solid at the moment. Had a very interesting conversation on Tuesday to Greg Cummings. Now, he's a real estate principal from San Diego in California, who is transacting real estate deals from different parts of the world. He's decided to go remote, so he tells us a little bit about that. David Snell was here from WA talking about the Perth real estate market and what people are doing to stand out from other buyers. He has a very interesting story. And we kept it in WA with Gavin Higney, and he was talking about first home buyers and some of the top suburbs versus the cheaper areas. So that is all coming up on our Sunday.
From first-time home buyers to seasoned investors to breaking property news, discover the stories behind the real estate.
Well, we certainly have that happening right now in Canberra. We've gone from a marketplace that was our clearance rate for auction was 95%, and our days on market were 23, 24 days. Right now, there are some properties that are taking substantially longer, and some not achieving the desired price outcome that we would have anticipated when we first started marketing. So yeah, look, that is occurring, and that's part of the process. And I guess it's no different than when you own shares. Sometimes they go up and sometimes they go down. Don't have a lot of control over that. Probably have a bit more influence in the value of a property based on who's on the job with the sale process.
So in terms of a price range, what's your preferred, like right now, where's the sweet spot for you in terms of an agent selling in the Canberra market?
So to give listeners a bit of an overview of Canberra values, so the current record sale price for a residential property in Canberra is $9 million. That was around 12 months ago, and that's on a property on a couple of thousand square metres of land, a substantial home. There are some properties that I know of that if they were to come to market would break the record by millions. But, there are some properties that I've know of that are likely to fetch 15 million and north of that. The average marketplace that I work in, my average sale price is around $2.3 million. Obviously, the Canberra median sale price is a little over $1 million right now.
Canberra I think you might even go back as long as 40 years ago, certainly 30 years ago. I mean, there's been patches there for a long period of time when Canberra, with the median price, was outselling, was higher than Melbourne.
There have been times where that's, and I think at the moment we're sitting number second to Sydney from memory.
Yeah, so that's kind of the point in case. And a lot of people, when they go into Australia, they find that quite bizarre. But as you say, the secret is really out now in terms of the desirability of Canberra. In terms of what is happening right now, in terms of the market, I mean, just how is the market overall trending for our listeners tuning in this morning?
Well, the market in Canberra at the moment, there are different segments of it. So, there are certain types of properties that are drawing more attention than others. And so they may be, for example, properties that are newer, that are newly built, or downsizing type properties in very well located properties. They're turning over very quickly. And then there's a lot of activity in the sub-$1 million range in some outer areas. And they are also lots of depth of buyers around that and also investors. And then we have the larger blocks of land in the more desirable locations that are closer to facilities and schools and amenities are drawing strong attention by families wanting to upsize. So overall, right now, I would say that the market in Canberra is fast becoming what is a normal market. So the saturation rate of properties transacted is normal, and that's off the back of very strong, fast, incredible increases in value of the back of COVID.
From interest rates rising, a shifting landscape, rentals running hot, clearance rates, a tight rental market, we cover it all every morning from 6 a.m. on the Real Estate Breakfast.
So tell us how this idea evolved and what exactly you are doing.
Absolutely. So if we back up a little bit, this whole idea sparked from a trip that I took in 2014, where I traveled for 7 months around the world. Back then, my team was it was only 3 of us, and we had our biggest year ever that year while I was gone, but still working remotely and traveling. And so it sparked this idea that I would do this same sort of adventure for an entire year. But this time, the focus would be more on going to certain countries, to one location within that country, get an Airbnb, set up, make myself at home in that area, get to know it. I wanted to know the guy that is making the coffee in the morning, the barista, and my waiter, and the bartender, and the cashier at the local market. And that's my goal with this, and that's what's been going on. I left mid-April, and I spent 1 month in Tagazout, Morocco. And now I'm on stop 2, which is Portugal. And just so we're clear too, I don't just stay in my Airbnb the whole time. I mean, I get out and explore the areas. But what's been really fantastic is I managed to run my team, which is now there's 6 of us total. And I work a regular, schedule. So I get my mornings and early afternoons free, and then I get on with my work day and work into the evening, and then have a little dinner and then catch back up with work, and I'm off to bed. So there you go.
How does your sales team interact with you? So, I mean, the communication now is a given. It's there. Unless you're in the jungle and you've got no coverage, that might be a bit of an issue. It could be that when you first move offshore, some of your team might get a little bit nervous, but then it probably all shakes down in the first month, did it?
It sure did. In fact, obviously, there's all these little pluses that came out of COVID, right? And one of the things that we started back then when we weren't getting together in the office was we do, our lead generation, lead follow-up, whatever you want to call it, prospecting, some people call it. We started doing that daily on Zoom together. And now we don't get on and start talking with each other, but it's sort of an accountability, if you will. Hey, I know they're doing it, he's doing it, et cetera. And it keeps us on schedule to, get the most important activity of the day done, which is making sure, our clients and referrals are, being contacted and being, and having us reach out to them to check on, their real estate needs. So we've been doing that with me even abroad. It's the time zones of Morocco and Portugal are such that at roughly 6 o'clock in the evening, I'm on with them for an hour and a half. And then on Wednesdays, we started doing one-on-one calls. So I have a one-on-one call with each team member. And then we do a team meeting as well for 45 minutes and just, touch base, which is something we've done for a while. Needless to say, we've actually been in almost more regular contact than when I'm there, other than not being in person. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I just wonder, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm wondering whether this has an upside. And what I mean by that is that there is this focus, this intense focus that when you are on a Zoom call, when you are talking as a group, or when you are having those one-on-one conversations, whether or not there's more of this focus because you are not in San Diego, you're not in the US, whether there is more of a concentrated focus and that has an upside.
Yeah, I would agree to that from the perspective of I'm at this point in my career. I've been doing this actually. I'm teaching. I'm going into my 20th year now. I just got into. I know we said 18 years, so 19 years completed. Going into my 20th year. I just turned 50, and there's this part of me that really wants to turn more into, a mentor and a coach. And that's a lot of what this has turned into is really being more focused on their growth and helping them. I even want more of that. I mean, we've got this one day that we're meeting, and I would like to carve out more time to focus on that, because at the end of the day, that's what I feel like I've been put on this planet to do, is to teach and help others. So it really is it's been a very fantastic sort of turn in my career that I think is going to lead down the path of being more focused on business coaching.
Know your property with us on the Real Estate Podcast.
Do you think there's any mixed messages in the market of Perth at the moment for that very reason that is stopping vendors from listing and moving on?
No, spot on, Craig. We're talking about people that are living in their own home. They are paralysed. You are spot on. So we could triple what's coming on the market if they could find something. That's typically what they say to us. I'm afraid to sell because I'm going to be homeless. And they've all got friends that thought they'd go and rent it. Rentals are the same. We're at historic lows there, 0.4% vacancy rate. So even going and renting a property is very, very difficult. Upper middle class people that are never used to being rejected in their life on a rental property now are, joining a queue of 20 or 30 people in front of them. And so they panic, they're paralysed, to use your term, and there is a paralysis in the market. I think we're finding investors are coming to the marketplace because Perth has been very flat since 2014 until recent times. So I think they are using the opportunity to cash it in. So we're finding our rental portfolio is the one where most of the listings are coming from.
Just before the break, we were talking about just how many vendors at the moment are just sitting and waiting because you've got to replace your property, right? That's the big problem. Now, we talk about it being a rampant market. David, how do buyers particularly get in front of the queue? Because a lot of buyers, but not that many properties.
No, well, even off air, we were discussing this interesting fact. So I sold a property a couple of weekends ago that got a lot of publicity here in Perth because so many people turned up, like literally, 500 over 3 home opens, Thursday night, Saturday and Sunday. We talked about selling in 8 days, but it feels like we're doing, 38 days work in 8 days because of the intensity of it all, the number of inspections, the number of home opens, the number of offers. That particular home achieved 44 offers. And so there's 44 offers coming forward. How do you get noticed? Many of them were very similar sort of offers. In Western Australia, typically we don't do auctions. Just be aware of that in terms of differentiation on the East Coast. My son is the CEO of Ray White and a big auctioneer, and he always gives me a hard time about that, saying that we should auction all his properties. But that's another topic for another day. But in WA, I received, for example, of those 44, 9 letters of plea to the owner of why they should be picked to be the successful purchaser. I didn't ask for these letters, they volunteered them. And Craig, I'm talking about letters that included wedding photographs. I'm not joking, I've got one in front of me. They talk about their family used to live in the suburb and what it meant to them, and how, earlier times there was a divorce and now they've got the opportunity to come back. Even a couple of people whose a family passed away and left money for them so they can get back into this suburb, and they put the pleas to the owners. This particular home hadn't been renovated for a long time as an original condition, and the buyers were describing what they do to the property to bring it back to its former glory. And I've got to be honest, the owner, who was very elderly, was very touched and very moved by those, compared to, say, someone that's just going to knock it down or do something else. And with very similar offers, unsurprisingly, the successful purchaser was one that wrote a personal plea, gave a description. Some buyers even offered the owner that they could come back and see it after they finished renovating it. So it was quite an experience, and it meant a lot to her and had an impact.
Powerful, up-to-date news every morning from 6 a.m.
And good morning to you, Gavin. Which way do you see next week's decision from the RBA going?
Far be it from me, Craig, to go against the ANZ Bank and the major banks. I would say the next week's decision will be on hold. And I think the interesting thing about interest rates, isn't it? We all thought interest rates were going to pile the market down. It was a little bit like a fight between two, one being interest rates in one corner, population growth in the other corner. Population growth came out and knocked out interest rates in the first round, population growth driving the property market.
Have you heard of people writing these letters of, we think your property is fantastic and we'd love to be the purchaser, and they cite a whole list of reasons why they would love to buy that property? It's something I'd never heard of before, but David was telling us that yesterday morning. Have you heard about that?
Actually, a guy rang me last week, and he's been trying to buy a property and he's missed out so many times, and he's sold his property, so he's panicking. And he looked in the suburb that he wanted to buy. He looked at all the properties that haven't changed hands for the last 10 years. He wrote handwritten letters to them, dropped them in their letterboxes. He got 2 responses, and now he's actually ended up buying one of those properties. He's done his own groundwork and found that. I don't know why the agents wouldn't have found that. I don't, perhaps people felt compassion because he was looking for a home for his family, and it worked that way, but it worked.
Cottesloe, having a look at the median price now, it sits at just over 3.2 million for houses, 822,000 and change for units, and the median rent $1,200 for a house and $620 for units. Now, that area has just kept on growing.
Yeah. Look, if you went back probably 2 to 3 years, Cottesloe was the epicentre of the boom. And it showed up in Cottesloe first, and then from there moved to the other surrounding upmarket suburbs. Today, it probably sits in the lower end of the market. But in Cottesloe, you've had just people with balance sheets of 200, 300, 400 million, billions in some instances. And so to put 10 or 15 million into a property, it's not a big difference between 10 and 15. And so the prices very quickly moved sort of from 2 to 3 million to 3 to 4 million. And all of a sudden, from going from 2 to 4, it's doubled in value. But it's still a very small percentage of the balance sheet of the people driving the market who were buying the prime properties, which there's not a high supply of. So that's all. You always get a breakout price, and then it revalues the suburb, and that suburb revalues the next suburb. And that. But Cottesloe was the epicentre of this boom.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.